Welcome everyone to the December 11th, 2023 regular meeting of the East Bethel City Council. Could you rise to say the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Okay. Presentations and public hearings. 2024 budget presentation. I imagine Mr. Mike Druzorski is going to take the lead on that.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I do have a brief presentation of the 2024 budget and levy, and then we can open it up for the public comment. Again, the City of East Bethel has a year-long budget process that commences on January 2nd of each year when the budget model is created. The budget model chronicles the prior 2 years' activity, the current year's budget, and the next year's budget that is being considered for approval. Embedded in the model are updates to salary benefits line items and debt service requirements for the 2024 budget. From there, the city has a series of meetings where the budget is discussed and modified. The objective of tonight's meeting is to provide a broad overview of the 2024 budget, allow public input following the review, and then consider the adoption of the final budget and levy. Before we get into the budget, I just wanted to go over some financial highlights. Looking at the city's most current year completed, we note that the revenues came in at 101% of budget and expenditures came in at 97% of budget. This illustrates that our budget process and modeling does a good job in capturing actual activity that occurs. The city has a formal fund balance policy that states that the city should maintain a minimum of 40% of next year's budgeted general fund expenditures and its fund balance, The city had a fund balance of roughly $3.67 million at the end of 2022, or 54% of the 2023 budget. Given this strong fund balance, the city is able to use $225,000 of that in order to minimize the levy increase for 2024. The city also has capital funds set up for equipment, streets, parks, and buildings, so when capital equipment becomes fully depreciated, there are funds available for those items to be replaced without the need to borrow funds from external sources. And finally, the city has the 7th lowest tax rate in Anoka County out of 21 cities. Again, based on the inputs from the Finance Committee, department heads, and the City Council, the budget model and budget book was prepared for the City Council to review at tonight's meeting. Looking at the general fund budget from the macro viewpoint, we note that the 2024 revenues and expenditures are budgeted to increase by 5%, or $347,400, from $6,449,300 in 2023 to $6,796,700 in 2024. Please note that in order to balance the 2024 revenues with expenditures, the city is using $225,000 in fund balance. That said, the city is still projected to maintain a healthy fund balance into 2025. Again, the components that make up the $6.8 million in general fund revenue are cable franchise fees, liquor and tobacco licenses, building inspection permit revenue, state aids for streets and fire, fines and forfeits, intergovernmental charges, cemetery revenue, tower site lease revenue, gambling contribution revenue, interest earnings, and of course, property taxes. Again, the main objective of this slide is to emphasize that the city receives roughly 81% of their general fund revenue from property taxes and is by far the city's most important revenue source. There are two primary ways one can look at the city expenditure budget. One way is to look at it by object, or what is actually being purchased. Personnel costs for salaries and benefits, contracted services, supplies, etc. The city's personnel costs account for roughly 42% of the general fund budget. The city budgeted for 22 full-time employees in 2024, 6 in administration, 4 in community development, 9 in public works, and 3 in the fire department. Of those employees, 9 are represented by a union. For 2024, the union contract called for a 3.5% cost of living increase in salaries and the cafeteria contribution for benefits to increase from $1,425 to $1,450 per month. For 2024, the mayor, council, and committee stipends are budgeted to remain unchanged. The city also budgets for 35 paid-on-call firefighters and 2 seasonal public works employees. Overall, salaries and benefits reflect an increase of roughly $52,000 over 2023. A summary of the city's contracted service budgets for 2024 show that the law enforcement contract is budgeted to increase by $174,000 or 14%. The city attorney contract is budgeted to increase by $15,000 or 9%. The internal transfer to the street capital fund is budgeted to increase by $50,000. Now, the alternate way one can look at the city expenditure budget is by department. The general government classification captures all expenses involved with city governance: the city council, city administration, finance, assessing, legal, and elections. This classification is budgeted to increase by 5% from $1,301,000 in 2023 to $1,368,400 in 2024. The community development classification captures all expenses involved with planning, zoning, and building inspections. This classification is budgeted to decrease by 15% from $672,400 in 2023 to $570,300 in 2024. The public safety classification then captures all expenses involved with police and fire protection. This classification is budgeted to increase by 13% from $2,213,500 in 2023 to $2,510,700 in 2024. Engineering expenses are budgeted to decrease by 25% and are budgeted at $30,000. The public works classification captures all expenses involved with street maintenance and park maintenance. The public works classification is budgeted to increase by 3% from $1,565,900 in 2023 to $1,610,800 in 2024. Again, the transfers to other funds include transfers to street, building, and park capital, and it's budgeted to increase by 8% from $650,000 in 2023 to $700,000 in 2024. Now, shifting gears and onto our debt service funds, the city will have 2 outstanding bond issues at the end of 2023 with principal balances of roughly $15.2 million in total. Again, each year the city pays interest and principals on each of these bonds. These annual principal and interest payments will follow an amortization schedule that was determined when the initial bond sale occurred. The city also pays fiscal agent fees for each of these issues, which is reflected in the budget. The budget reflects an increase from 2023 to 2024 from $875,000 to $917,500. Again, we have 2 different components to the overall city levy. The first is the general fund levy, which is projected to increase by 2% from $5,144,600 to $5,251,100. The debt service levy component is projected to increase also by 2% from $945,500 to $962,500. Adding the 2 levies together gives us another increase of 2%, or gives us an increase of 2% from $6,090,100 to a total city levy then of $6,213,600. The other levying authorities within the city are its Economic Development Authority and Housing Redevelopment Authority. Again, the goals of the EDA are to encourage redevelopment activities, achieve commercial development, and encourage development of housing within the city. The EDA levy is budgeted to remain unchanged at that $136,200 level. The East Bethel Housing and Redevelopment Authority's purpose is to provide a sufficient supply of adequate, safe, and sanitary dwellings and address substandard, slum, or blighted areas existing within the city. The HRA levy is budgeted to remain unchanged at $77,000. Overall, the city of East Bethel is a full-service community located 30 miles north of downtown Minneapolis. The city is 48 square miles in total area and has a population of roughly 12,000 residents. The city delivers a variety of services including planning and zoning, code enforcement, building inspections, police protection, fire protection, park maintenance, street maintenance, and snow plowing. The city has the 7th lowest tax rate in Anoka County out of 21 cities. Again, based on that 2023 tax rate, a house valued at $400,000 would pay roughly $106 per month for those services. All stakeholders should have received their 2024 property tax statements in the mail from Anoka County. A couple of reminders that your overall tax increase or decrease is controlled by a number of factors, including your taxable market value increase, decrease in relation to the entire city, the city levy, the county levy, and the school district levy. Staff recommends that the council open the floor for public comment on the 2024 budget and tax levies, and then consider the adoption of the general fund budget and levy, the EDA levy, and the HRA levy with the resolutions presented in this report. With that, the city council will welcome any input on the budget.
Excellent presentation, Mike. I don't know if I need to open it technically or whatever, but the block has been hit, so the public comment is open. Anyone have comments about the 2024 proposed budget? Hearing none, we'll close that. Do members of the City Council have questions for Mike or anything?
Yeah, Mike, could we get a copy of that rundown you just gave us?
For sure, yep.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yep.
I had a couple of questions. Where does the reserve capacity loan fit into this? 'Cause
Yep,
that just starts in 2024, right?
Yep.
Maybe you could explain what it is for.
Yep, so on one of the slides, I did mention that the debt service for the city is roughly $15.2 million. That is actually external bonds that the city holds. The other debt service that the city has is a $2 million loan with the Met Council. That is actually in the fund, in the sewer fund. So the city has that capped at $2 million and has tentatively agreed to pay that back over a 10-year period with the Met Council. So that will actually start in 2024 and is budgeted for in the sewer fund.
And do I remember correctly that the amortization worked out to be about $235,000 a year,
Yep.
give or take? So that would be on top of the 917. So it's going to be about what, 1.15 or something like that? 1.14 million of debt service per year. Works out to be about 18 or 19% of our
yep,
budget.
Yep. One of them is general, in your general tax levy. The other one's getting paid for by your sewer fund. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And then when we get down, if nobody has any more comments, I guess we're ready to go to motions and a vote, but,
I'd like to say something yet,
yeah.
Kevin. When it comes to the city budget, it demands the most diligent of oversight, and we must navigate every department to ensure taxpayer dollars are spent on the true needs and not frivolous wants. Our residents expect fiscal responsibility. Their future along with the city depends on it. The city leaders, they have to boldly safeguard every single penny by using our resources wisely. I believe it's our duty. I believe it's our solemn duty to do something like that. Personally, I and a couple of the members have spent considerable amount of time going over the numbers, meeting with the department heads, some of them trying not to only understand but grasp and ask questions about areas of concern. This council puts a lot of trust in the members of these departments, and we ask that they use the sharp pencil. Even though inflation and cost of everything was skyrocketing around us, I believe we still have a little bit to work to do yet, but the heads of these departments and staff and the effort they put in into this budget, second to none. while the city around us saw large increases in percentages of what their taxpayers and the residents are gonna pay, this staff and these department heads have kept this under control, and I wanna say thank you for the hard work you guys have done.
Amen.
Thank you.
By the way, I messed up. I want to introduce Mr. Matt Look. This is Matt's our new city administrator, and this is his first city council meeting. So, welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And following on that, I would say that the young man over there, Mike Jaworski, is as good a financial person as I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of them. And we're very lucky to have him, and thanks for what you do with the budget and getting all the numbers together and everything, auditing the whole bit. He's also the deputy city administrator too, and the human resources director. How many hats he got there, Mike? But I just, what I had asked before the meeting, I mentioned the first resolution, which is about the general fund budget and levy resolution. Maybe you could just expand a little bit on the enterprise funds part of it.
Yep, so your budget is comprised of different categories, just to summarize things. Your first component really is your general fund budget, which captures all the activity that was previously mentioned in the presentation. The second part is your special revenue funds, which is really your HRA, your EDA, and your recycling.
Can
Again,
you
these-
call up page 99, I think it is, in
Sure.
the packet? And then it'll make it easier for folks. That's Mike's crab apples, by the way. Yeah, that's what he's referring to.
So the components of your actual city budget is broken down into these four categories. The first one is the general fund, that gets the most attention. That's the one that the major levy comes from. The special revenue funds is that EDA and HRA that I spoke of. And the other component of that one is your recycling fund. That is fully and totally funded by Anoka County SCORE funds. Your debt service funds, again, is the one I mentioned in the presentation. You have 2 bond issues remaining. Again, those are expenditure budgets. And then finally on your city budget is your enterprise funds. These are totally supported by user fees. So you have a water fund, a sewer fund, and an arena fund, all supported by user fees.
Thank you. Okay, with that, anybody move to make a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to approve resolution 2023-87, setting the final property tax levy and budget for 2024.
Second.
Okay, the motion is made and seconded. By the way, what Tim was talking about, Blaine, I believe, the last I heard, is they're gonna have a property tax levy increase of 19% this year. And Mr. Look, as the chair of the Anoka County Board of Commissioners, can confirm that the county's levy increase is gonna be 15.4 still?
10.4.
10.4, wow, you guys did some whacking on it. Well, that's good, and I believe Ham Lake is around 7 or 8%, so we are in good shape considering the enormous hit we took on the sheriff's department in particular. That was 14.4% increase, that was tough. Fortunately, we had a one-time state grant that helped allay the damage it could have done, but hopefully next year we won't be facing another one of those. Sorry for the expounding there, but so the motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of passing the motion to, all in favor of supporting the motion to pass resolution 2023-87, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. The next motion is regarding the levy for the Economic Development Authority. Who would like to move that? Don't throw all the work on Brian's shoulders now, come on.
I'll make a resolution, or I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-88, setting the final 2024 EDA levy and budget.
Second. Second.
Motion's made and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard.
I move to pass resolution 2023-89, adopting the 2024 HRA budget and levy.
Second.
That's the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Motion made and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. That was unanimous. So, as far as the recording secretary, what do you want to do?
Mr. Mayor, if you want to take item B there and move it down to consent item J, perhaps?
Or would it be JK? We're at J already? Okay.
I move to move B, the city council minutes discussion, down to consent agenda, item K.
Second.
Motion made to amend the agenda. Seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Okay, so that would bring us to 4C, which is Viking Meadows S2 Traffic Solutions Study and Preliminary Plat Presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On October 23rd, 2023, the City Council authorized Vern Swing and S2 Traffic Solutions to conduct a traffic study impact on the proposal for the Viking Meadows redevelopment. Vern is here tonight to present the results of the traffic study to you and answer any questions you may have. I'll introduce Vern. Thanks. Probably
Yeah,
that would be
please.
it.
It's a nice festive tie you have on tonight.
Thank you, thank you. Seemed like the right season. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, and Aaron. Once again, my name is Vern Swing, and actually we are S Squared Traffic Solutions. Swing, Schmidt, we figured S Squared sounded like a good way to go. And we have completed our initial look at Viking Meadows, which is a 155-acre site, which will include 242 single-family homes south of Viking Boulevard and to the east of Sand Hill Parkway. You can go to the next slide, I think. There's a picture of the site plan, and if you, I know it's kind of an eye test, but if you look at it carefully, you can see there's a full access that's planned on Sand Hill Parkway, and a right-in, right-out only access planned off of Viking Boulevard. We consulted with the city and county as well, and state, and developed, put together what's the study area for the site, which is shown up on the screen, including Trunk Highway 65 and a number of intersections, Viking Boulevard, 187th, and Crosstown, as well as looking at intersections along Viking, including Sand Hill, the former golf course access, and Greenbrook Drive, and then considered intersections along Crosstown, including Greenbrook Drive and 65, as we said. In order to better understand impacts of land development, it's necessary to do a couple of things. First up is to forecast conditions that would be present without the land development. which were known as background conditions. In this case, we consulted a number of different resources, including MnDOT and Anoka County's comprehensive plans for the area, as well as the city's comprehensive plans. And we included, which helped us generate background growth numbers. And then we adjusted those for the inclusion of the Elevage development and the Osborne development. It's noted that the Elevage study and discussions with MnDOT have indicated that Trunk Highway 65 and 187th lane will need a signal, similar to what we have at Viking with the J-turn. So you would signalize both of those so as not to cause unsafe conditions in the future, not only at 65, but also at the intersection of 187th and Sand Hill. Also, Trunk Highway 65 and Crosstown has been identified as a potential future interchange, both by Anoka County and by MnDOT. So with that in mind, we started first by looking at the crash statistics. The crash data was provided by MnDOT, and that included the information from Anoka County as well as the city that they had in their databases. It's noteworthy that the data that we used for Viking Boulevard reflects the changes that have occurred after the fatality, not prior to that, including signage and significantly improved coordination between the intersection of Viking and the J-turn associated with Viking. Looking at the statistics, the critical crash rates, and statewide averages, none of the intersections actually rise to the category as bad actors. They are, you know, some of the rates are maybe a little higher than others, but they are below the statewide averages and below the critical crash rates. So from a safety perspective, it's not anticipated that the development of Viking Meadows will result in an exacerbation to an already bad situation. Then looking specifically at Viking Meadows, after having established what the background conditions are, we estimated the amount of traffic that the site would generate. This is based on ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers database that basically looks at hundreds and hundreds of these type of developments, puts together a database with a weighted average to be slightly more conservative. And with that, it shows that the 242 single-family homes will generate 169 AM peak hour trips, 227 PM peak hour trips, and about 2,280 daily trips. So with that, we looked at 2 design years to study conditions without and with the Viking Meadows development. The 2 design years, 2028 is the year after and full occupancy of all the homes in the development. Whether that happens by 2028 or not, that's sort of just the marker in time that we placed on that. And then we looked at the 2045 traffic conditions, which are consistent with the city's long-range plans. That said, all of the intersections, with the exception of Crosstown and 65, had acceptable levels of service. Generally, they were at A, with some of the side street movements not doing quite as well at E or in that range. Part of the reason for that is some of those intersections are along the MnDOT Trunk Highway 65, and that's a higher priority road than the cross streets are. So there's a lot of green time provided for that, which has associated red time for the side street, and that side street then, red time is, it results in delay for the drivers, which is why there's a lower level of service for those movements. When we looked at 2045, again, the conditions were adequate for all of the intersections except the Crosstown and 65 intersection, and as identified by MnDOT in Anoka County, that may or may not be, but hopefully will be an interchange at some point. So in conclusion, the crash data did not identify any specific intersections that will be exacerbated by the addition of traffic from Viking Meadows. The 2028 conditions with and without the project essentially had the same level of service and the same amount of delay, and relative queue distances were equal. All of them generally worked well, with the exception of Crosstown and 65. And again, the same result for 2045. So at this point, I know that was short and sweet, but I'll happy to entertain questions.
So to sum it up very succinctly, based on the no build and the build, there's very little change.
That's correct.
Okay.
What parameters are used to determine the level of service? I don't quite.
Level of service is a term that traffic engineers created to help identify and help people relate to the impacts that or the changes in operation on a roadway that you might experience. Level of service A, essentially it's based on delay. There are other things as well, but essentially it's based on driver delay. And when you look at it, level of service A is kind of like a letter grade that you'd receive in school. That's good. Level of service F is not so good. Doesn't necessarily mean failure, but it does mean that the road or the approach is at its theoretical capacity. So when you look at the two things, level of service A, I heard somebody once refer to that as a condition where you could lay down on the streets and not anticipate encountering a vehicle for 20 or 30 seconds, and at the same time, level of service D, it's pretty crowded, cars are moving, but there's not a lot of gaps in traffic. Level of service F, cars are going significantly less than the speed limit. They may be moving, they may not be moving, but does that help answer the question?
Yeah, kind of. I guess I'm a little bewildered that with the two build or no build, that there's not that much more congestion putting this many automobiles on the road in a day. How can that not cause trouble? What am I missing?
Looking at the roads that are surrounding the site, let's look at Viking as a good example. Currently, that has an ADT somewhere in the 5,000 range. This project, while it's adding 2,200, that they're not all going to that intersection or onto that road. They can be going other directions out of the site. That dissipates that traffic out somewhat. The roadway itself has a theoretical capacity with the right and left turn lanes of somewhere between 15 and 18,000 cars a day. So it's got 5,000 now. It has room for 15,000. So right now we're using about 1/3 of the capacity. If you add in, let's say we add in all 2,200, that still leaves you with more than 50% capacity on the road for additional development. The amount of delay being encountered by the drivers, while it's going to increase a little bit, is not necessarily going to increase at a big enough rate to cause a change in operations in terms of level of service, or probably in terms of queue.
Well, when you're talking level of service, do they add buffers that, I mean, I'm sure everybody's pulled up to a stoplight, all of a sudden the light turns and the guy in front of you is goofing off? Right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
with
My favorite person.
a lot of intersections, I'll say 221st stop here, or 237th. Even with the lights up there, people have a habit of, well, the light's changing, I'm just gonna go for it. I mean, there's a lot of variables that can happen, and this book, this ITE book, I kind of read through everything, and do they take the best scenarios, or do they look at things and go, well, you know,
It's, the ITE trip generation numbers are a weighted average, and they're weighted on the conservative side. So they'll be they're likely slightly higher than what we would see. Since COVID, people are making fewer trips home to work and vice versa. It's not to say that the numbers are necessarily down on a daily basis, but they are absolutely down on the peak hour basis. And you know, it changes. ITE will probably have a different number in the next iteration.
do they go by areas when they do this? Geographical areas, say, well, Dallas does this, and Minneapolis does that,
it would be
East
nice.
Bethel does this.
It would be nice if they did. There is a local database. I don't believe it's been updated since COVID.
Okay.
But it was showing to be pretty close to the ITE numbers when it was being maintained.
And so you're looking at only one stoplight, you said, at the J turn on 187th? Or did I mishear?
That would be the, as far as new traffic control changes, yes.
Right.
I was surprised with the analysis to see that that Sand Hill and Viking is operating at will operate at level of service A into the year 2045. That I had anticipated that with this development and some of the other ones that are coming online, that might require a future change at that intersection from stop control on the side street, which is now, to it's too close to be a traffic signal. I was thinking it might be a roundabout, but unless there's a lot of development to the north that occurs, I don't think that's gonna come around.
So is that road to the east, what is the current Viking Meadows entrance, is that going to be an entrance into this development also?
As a right in, right out only.
And is Sand Hill gonna have a traffic light at it, or
No.
no?
No, it's gonna stay, at least from our numbers, it looks like it can stay side street stop controlled. It still provides, you know, level of service A for both the intersection and the movements.
If I could ask both you and Matt, because Matt is pretty well steeped in transportation issues in the county.
Mhm.
Uh, What do you think do you think it's optimistic to expect, I hate to even say it, because I'm a motorcyclist and I hate the Viking reduced conflict intersection. I've had people pull over on me 3 times in that intersection because they don't know, unless they're used to the intersection, that you have to change lanes.
Right.
And so they do it, realize it, and then they're right on you. But anyway, you're talking about a reduced conflict intersection, the same kind of situations
Right.
up on Viking, only
Yes.
one set of lights at 187th, right?
Correct.
Okay, what do you think it's optimistic that that would be built by 2028? Or no?
Well, MnDOT brought it up when we were discussing the intersection with them,
Mm-hmm.
as something that they are actively looking at. So,
At specifically 187th,
at specifically 187th.
okay.
Without the stoplight there, there are insufficient gaps on 65 to easily get out, merge, and get over into that left turn lane.
Yeah.
So traffic will back up all the way through the roundabout, which will, in fact, cause the roundabout to fail.
Yeah.
Even though there's plenty of capacity for that by itself, you just back everyone into it and around and up the road or the other direction, and it just won't work. So something is going to be needed, and I think not only our study. Prior to that, the Elevage study had identified that, which I think is what put it on the MnDOT radar. And we went through their numbers, checked them, reran it with our numbers, and came to the same conclusion.
Well, as a long-term resident of East Bethel, it's counterintuitive. And I live on the opposite side of, this isn't gonna affect me one way or the other, I'm retired and all that. But it's just counterintuitive, because all you hear about is the traffic on specifically Viking and 65 and
Right.
65 in general. But I do believe in data. I believe in analyses if they're properly set up and all that. Maybe I could just follow with a couple of other questions that I came up with. What assumption, as far as your 2045 scenario, what assumption did you make as far as to the development of the Osborne property?
We did assume that would fully develop.
But I mean, what would it entail? How many homes
to
or
remember.
businesses or?
I'm trying to remember that. I believe we had 60,000 square feet of commercial retail, and you better not quote me on this, 132 single-family homes, and then some multifamily as well.
And what is that, like 60 acres or something?
66 acres, I think.
Yeah. Okay, on the long-range planning horizon year to 2045, if I'm not mistaken, Anoka County was projecting a 1% growth rate in background growth.
Yep.
And that's per annum, right?
Yes.
And in this study, you used 0.37, which is almost 1/3 of what the county used. What was the rationale for that?
The county's background growth had what they call traffic analysis zones, and inside the traffic analysis zone that encompassed the area here was an assumption for Viking Meadows, for Osborne, and for Elevage.
Mm-hmm.
So we plugged them. We went ahead and figured out what that trip generation was, and then adjusted the number so that there is still background growth, i.e. cars coming from outside the area, but within the area, it is pretty much those 3 developments that will generate any of the traffic that's associated with the 1%.
I'm not sure I'm following that, because that's my other question. Is there was a? By the way, I did request the appendices for this study.
Yeah, they should have been sent.
And what I was particularly interested is when the data was collected, the traffic counts, and they were, according to the Appendix A, or 1, whichever, it was at the normal hours you'd expect, you know, like 7 to 8 in the morning and 5 to 6 in the evening kind of time period. So they were, you were collecting data at the right time, however you want to say it. But there was something else. There was something about the county had a 2045 projection, and you deducted Elevage and Viking Meadows and Osborne from the analysis or something. Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. We took the 1% and grew it up. And then because that 1% is inclusive of Viking Meadows, Elevage, and Osborne, we don't want to double count them, so we took them out. So we still left a growth rate in there, but.
That's what netted down to the 0.37?
That's what netted, correct.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't do a very good job explaining it, guys.
No, it just took my brain a little while to catch up, that's all. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I got one. Is this set up now as a single phase, or do you have second phase, third phase? Any of that in the works, or?
This is set up as a single phase.
Okay, so the commercial property that's come up in conversations, that's something that you're not interested in, or? I guess I'm looking at it because I know that area, and correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, but when the sewer water project came through, that was pretty nasty ground to try to build anything on. Am I right in saying that, or no?
Yes, that's correct. There's a small parcel in the southeast corner that's slated for commercial get up there. It's a pretty small area of land.
I'm sorry, I was looking at this. That proposed commercial thing, there's been some talk about it being, it's in like the northwest corner of the property, and
Yeah, 9 acres or something?
9 acres, was it, or something like that? But there's been talk about it being basically a peat bog, that's a bottomless peat bog, or something, you know, how people.
Is that what it is, Craig?
But
The nine-
anybody know about that parcel up there? Is it
9 acres
believable?
to the
Yeah, on the northwest.
north, right in.
I don't know if it's 9 or 15 or whatever, but that area right up there.
Yeah,
Craig, can you speak on that? I mean, you're pretty familiar with this.
Yeah, you can see the vegetated stuff to the right, yep, there. That's pretty much the only usable piece there.
So the other is not buildable.
It's wetland to begin with, so you have to permit all the wetland fill.
Yeah,
So it's likely not feasible to build on it.
okay.
But there is one lot there, to the south of that, right there where the cursor is. That's a stormwater pond already developed for that lot and used for the service road also.
Okay. Could I ask you one more question? And this will
Absolutely.
probably be the last one. But on the diagrams in Appendix A, what are the boxes in the center of the intersections? What do those numbers mean? Like 0.94 or 0.094? What do those mean?
Those little boxes are associated with what's referred to as the peak hour factor.
What is that?
So the peak hour factor is a number that's used to adjust the volumes for the peak hour to reflect peaking conditions that occur within 15 minutes. So if, for example, you have a factory that lets out and you get a huge throng of cars that come all at once and then they're gone, well, the operations of the intersection during that 15 minutes is gonna suck. So.
Is that a
using- that's
technical term?
And so you're gonna have huge delays over that time.
Yeah,
It's not fair to represent the intersection as the hour as a whole and say, oh, everything's fine, nothing's going on, when in fact we know that for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, when all that is letting out, it is dying. In fact, it'll take time after that, because it's kind of that accordion effect.
Yeah.
As traffic starts to get added on.
Work
added on,
off
it
the
takes
backlog,
longer-
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
to dump. So that is used to adjust the hourly volumes
okay.
to
That makes
account for
sense.
peaking conditions.
Now, once you explain it, it makes sense, yeah. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
You have any questions, Matt, since you're among the bunch of us up here, you're the transportation expert?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure I'm the expert, but I guess the question I would have is, as it relates to recent conversations at the county, we're looking at stepping up the proposed change from a signalized RCI to a grade separated interchange at 22 and 65. How, in your opinion, putting you on the spot, would that potentially support this area or enhance it with, or would that affect a second RCI or no? What would your opinion be on that?
Well, it would absolutely change the patterns in the area. You know, not having to wait for, 2 minutes, sometimes if you're unlucky, 3 minutes to get out onto 65 and go. Having, in fact, having ramps and a merge area and the whole 9 yards would help that operation. As far as traffic on both sides of 65 on Viking, I think it would increase the importance of Viking as a regional mover to have an interchange there. It would become a much more prominent east-west route. That said, I'm not as familiar with all the properties that could develop along both sides, but I would think it would enhance the development opportunity.
Mr. Mayor, if I believe the county will be pursuing legislative action on that this year, and it may be something that the council would like to consider a resolution in support of that at some point.
You'll keep a log of that for us so that we can do so, yeah.
Aaron, I had a question for you as long as Craig is here. You were at the planning commission meeting. Now, there were several people that were concerned about ponding and runoff and whatnot in the project. And they were just, I guess, baffled. They didn't know. And that's why I was gonna ask Craig what his thoughts were. I was hoping somebody'd be here that could ask those questions.
Are you talking at the concept plan meeting, or are you talking at the preliminary plat meeting? Because I recall one person speaking from the public at the public forum about the preliminary plat, and they were actually supportive of the preliminary plat. They were the owner of the business across the street.
Oh, yeah.
I think
no,
Commissioner
this is-
Ryder
Yeah, the
was the only
insurance
one who was
agency.
questioning ponding. I don't know, I don't recall anyone else.
I wish he was here, then he could.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna paraphrase what he said. I mean, it just doesn't. All right.
Any other questions for Mr. Swing?
I got one that 2,282 cars per day is, it says, right? Or is that per week?
Per day.
Okay, so that's gonna be coming in and out of the development
That-
every day, right?
That's trips. So as far as cars are concerned, you cut that number in half. one trip in, one trip out per vehicle.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for
Absolutely.
doing the traffic study and presenting it to us. Thank you.
Yep, my pleasure.
This is the time in the agenda for the public forum. I don't know if anybody's signed up on the sheet over there. Thank you, sir. Is that Kim?
Kay?
Kay Anderson?
Correct.
Okay, good. And you state your address? and-
Sure.
Yeah.
My name is Kay Anderson. I live at 4819 217th Avenue Northeast. I'm here tonight to address the hiring of the new city administrator, nothing against the guy, and the mayor's decision to circumvent the normal public hiring process. First, I would like to ask the elephant in the room question that came up when I read the last two city council meeting minutes. What is the name of the third party who connected the job seeker to the mayor? Why do I ask this question? Because if that individual has so much influence on the mayor that the mayor chose a closed hiring process, and the soon-to-be new city administrator is well enough to connect it to this person that they were willing to initiate this process, the residents of East Bethel deserve to know the name of the person with this influence over 2 or more people in their city government. Second, what occurred is called cronyism, or as a woman who in the 60s, or not 60s, but 70s and 80s was trying to get a good job, it's called the Good Old Boys Network. Cronyism was banned by the federal government in employment in the 70s and 80s era because it wasn't good for government. The best person for the job would never have a chance unless they knew someone who could recommend them for the job, and the recommendations were only considered if the job seeker was from the same political party. As it stands tonight, East Bethel residents don't know who is the best person for the city administrator job because only one person was considered in a closed process. Third, I thought that relying on technically legal but ethically questionable conduct was a thing of the past for East Bethel. Remember that city council from a few years ago when 3 members of the same political party were elected, met before the first meeting, before they were sworn in, they planned the whole first meeting. Technically that's okay under the open meeting law. They had a majority, they planned out all their motions, they passed them all, and the public had no input. I find myself again wondering why this method of an apparently technically legal but ethically questionable conduct that occurred in this hiring process was coming back up in our city government. It's really concerning to me. My request is that you refrain from instigating similar apparently technically legal but ethically questionable practices and behaviors in the future. You are all elected representatives for a public entity. You have a responsibility for transparency and openness in your actions. I thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I have written this out because the secretary has trouble getting my correct sentences into her notes. I don't know who wants this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Let's see, that's on our agenda, our agenda, it's item 6 is a consent agenda. So,
Make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda with the,
Second.
with the addition of K.
okay, motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. Discussion, or do we go?
Are there any items to be pulled? If not, you can
Yeah.
go to discussion.
So do you folks have any items to be pulled? Because I do, but let you go first. No? Okay, I'd like to pull the minutes of November, item B, which are the minutes of November 13th City Council meeting. Item D, which is setting the meeting dates for 2024. Pull E, F, and G, the permanent fund transfer, the TIF permanent fund transfer, and ask Mike to elaborate on those a little bit. And pull item J, the check signatory approval. Other than that,
Just for clarification, those numbers don't, those letters do not line up with what I have on my agenda. Let me look at something
Did
here
they
really
change?
quick. Well, I download just the agenda from the city website.
okay, well, item B is minutes for November 13th.
And
Oh, I
want
see on
to-
this revised agenda, there are no minutes from November 13th,
Okay, that's, yep, that's
which
where
is
the-
strange because in the packet, there are minutes from November 13th.
Yeah, the agenda in the packet is different than the one that was posted on the website. So you are saying the right, the right
So the one,
items.
the one we got here at the meeting is incorrect, right?
The one that's on the city website at least. So
Well, yeah.
if,
Well, I downloaded this agenda from the city website. It was in the packet.
yeah,
So unless the packet's been changed, it should be okay.
yeah, looks like the one in the packet is just fine. One on the city website did not have the November 13th minutes as item B. Those were missing.
Okay.
So
All right, well,
we're good on what you called out, and
okay, then
the
with the
correction.
addition of K and the pulling of the items I mentioned, we can vote on that. then.
Yeah, we're good. If staff just wants to change the agenda on the city website for any future reference.
Yeah, just so anybody watching doesn't get confused about it.
Thank you.
All right, so made and seconded, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none heard. So on the minutes of November 13th, thanks again, guys. On the minutes of November 13th, I just had a simple correction, and that is on line 19, page 137 of this meeting's packet. It should say high debt level in a situation analogous to ours, instead of high debt level in a situation not analogous to ours. So just delete the not. It completely turns around the meaning of what I said. And to the folks at Time Saver, I looked at items 30, or lines 36 and 7 on page 137 of those meeting minutes, and I just wrote, huh? So if you could take a look at it, and what is there doesn't make any sense that I can figure out, and it was quoting me, so maybe listen to the tape again. That said, I've moved that we approve item B of the consent agenda.
Second.
Made and seconded, approved, or all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none heard. Approve city meeting dates, item D. Let's discuss work meeting, I hear my notes to myself, let's discuss work meetings which are in the resolution 2023-90. So. I'm trying to, pardon me, I have to zip down to where it is. Let's see.
Page 167, Mr. Mayor, if you're looking for the specific
167,
resolution.
Okay, I'm
Yep.
real close.
Yep.
Okay, page 167, so, yeah. We have city council work meetings. What we did was we said we wanted to avoid work meetings being, ironclad, bulletproof, however you want to describe it. But to have them as needed, not have it be an every month thing. Some people have an opinion about it one way or the other, but I just wonder, that's why I want to just discuss it with you guys. What is the sense of the council as far as the need for work meetings? And
Mr. Mayor, I think Ms. Frost has some small item that you might
Ms.
want to
Carrie
consider.
Frost, how are you, young lady?
Just fine.
What do you have to say about this
We
matter?
included the work meeting schedule on there because it's easier to have them scheduled and cancel them than it is to try and come up with a date after the fact.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
And Mayor, for what it's worth, I presume that's what Ms. Fisher was going to say, and I agree that this sets a regular notice that you can depend upon. You don't have to renotice, and then, of course, staff can counsel if for there any reason the council decides that a work meeting is not necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So that answers that part of the question. The other question I had, as pertains to item D, is has the recently floated idea of changing the EDA meeting dates been dropped? It was a proposed, I just got an email about, or saw an email proposed changing them from the third Monday to the third Tuesday or whatever, or is that been changed? What's the status of that? Because I see on the January 16th says third Tuesday, February 3rd, February 20th is third Tuesday, but it doesn't say that on any of the other dates, so.
Mr. Mayor, the
Anybody know?
conversation prior to was due to the combining of duties with the removal of the city planner, the city administrator, also by the bylaws as the executive director of the EDA. So Mr. Davis took all of those meetings. In the interim for Mr. Look, we had no idea or if he was available for those meetings. So the proposal was we kind of put the ball into play to determine could that meeting be moved so that I could handle those meetings as the city staff person. That has not been finalized.
Where does it seem to stand right now? It's still kind of in limbo then?
Yeah,
Still kind of up in the air.
Matt and I had a brief conversation this afternoon about
Okay.
it. For December's meeting, we're just gonna cancel, and we'll tackle January when we get
Okay.
there. If that
All right.
requires a change of bylaws and a change of the meeting schedule, we'll take care of that at
right.
an upcoming council meeting.
Thank you. With that, I'll move we pass item, or approve item D on the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none heard. Okay. And I'm gonna ask Mike to educate us all on permanent fund transfers. Beyond just looking at the resolution. I don't know if you can call that up or not, but it would be just.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the question. So essentially, this is a housekeeping item that we do every year, depending upon the workload that the city finance team encounters throughout the year for our TIF districts. So there's a log sheet that we kind of keep, and we chronicle the hours associated with each one of our districts. And at the end of the year, we set up a resolution to bill back the TIF districts for our administration time. So each one of the districts, TIF 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, are calling for a transfer of $1,400 each. Again, it's just a transfer from our TIF district to the general fund. So,
Thank you very much.
Yep.
That's exactly what I needed to know. Thanks. So with that, I'll make a movement, or I'll move that we approve items E, F, and G on the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. And the only remaining one that I pulled was item J, and that's the check signatory approval. And Brian handled this in 2023, and I'm just wondering if anybody else like to handle it in 2024.
I wouldn't mind.
You wouldn't mind?
No, I think it'd be a good experience.
Would you like to, or
I would.
just you wouldn't mind?
No, I think it'd be a good experience. I'd like to.
All right. All right, well, in that case, I would move that we approve Tim Miller, Councilman Miller, to be the check signator for 2024 in the event of my untimely demise or
Second.
being indisposed. Motion's made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard.
Thank you.
Sure enough. That disposes with our consent agenda. New business. Planning Commission. Conditional use permit for 18533 Buchanan Street Northeast. And Aaron's back in the saddle again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jennifer O'Brien, the owner of Team Drywall Incorporated, I should say co-owner, an East Bethel-based commercial and residential drywall company for over 32 years, have purchased 18533 Buchanan Street Northeast, formerly Northern Asphalt, with the intent to grow and expand their operations. The 2.19 acre property has an existing 6,000 square foot office and warehouse, 6,300 square feet of customer parking lot, and 4,500 square feet of screened exterior rear and side yard storage. 18533 Buchanan Street is zoned light industrial, and in accordance with City Ordinance Appendix A, the zoning code, construction, trade, or service businesses are permitted in the light industrial zone by a conditional use permit. Additionally, exterior storage in the light industrial and B3 districts is also a conditional use permit, subject to those three conditions identified in your staff report. Construction yards, however, are exempt from exterior storage requirements as outlined in section 24.4A, which is the three items that are outlined, provided they are located in the rear yard behind the principal building and cannot exceed 2 times the square footage of the principal building, and shall not be allowed within the required setbacks, public right-of-way, private access easement, or within the required parking area of the business. The 18533 Buchanan Street location has existing storage area near the rear and side yard of approximately 6 times that of the principal building. Which is in the rear and the side yard, which is why that exterior storage is being included in the conditional use permit. The fenced, the screening and fencing meet ordinance requirements and reduce visual impact from the right-of-way. In addition, accessory storage containers, as defined in Section 1, General Provisions of Administration, shall not be permitted in our commercial and or industrial district. Team Drywall currently has 1 employee and equipment, which will be out on job sites daily. The existing 6,300 square feet parking area is designated for 17 vehicles, and there is an abundance of exterior yard storage for sufficient parking in the event more employees are added to the company. Vehicles over 20,000 gross vehicle weight, construction equipment, and trailers are required by ordinance to be in the exterior storage yard and behind screening. The 2040 comprehensive plan, the light industrial district is intended and designed to provide areas of the city suitable for activities and uses that are industrial in nature. The proposed use aligns with our 2040 comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission held a public hearing at its November 28th, 2023 meeting. There were no public comments, and the Planning Commission, by a 6-0 vote, recommended approval of the conditional use permit to the City Council. The City Council should review the request, consider the Planning Commission's formal recommendation, and approve the conditional use permit as identified in Resolution 2023-83 with conditions.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 2023-83.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. I need to correct, I made a mistake. There was an item K on the consent agenda, and it related, we moved it down earlier in the meeting from above under presentations, and it was regarding the extension of our contract with Time Savers and Carla Worth. As near as I can tell, this is not a resolution, it's just a vote to approve that.
Yeah.
That we
Mayor, that
extend-
was added to the consent agenda, but I didn't see that it had been pulled, so when the consent agenda was approved, item
Yeah,
K was approved.
So it was okay?
I specifically added item K.
Yeah, but,
Okay.
so it was okay?
Correct.
You mean I didn't screw up? Wow.
I'm here to back you up.
I
You
tried
did
my
not
best,
screw
and
up.
I-
You're doing well.
So I failed to screw up, so, okay.
100% so
All right.
far, non-screw up.
All right, well, that's just peachy then. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Oh.
Thanks for getting me in trouble, Bob.
Well, I just want to thank Team Drywall for choosing to stay in the city and reinvest in the city. And as you
Absolutely.
expand, it's good to see. That's what we really like to see is home-based businesses and graduating into a commercial entity and a commercial zoning, and that is excellent. So thank you, Team Drywall.
Well said. Okay, the next item on the agenda in that event is 7A2, an interim use permit for a farm animal, a horse at 716 192nd Avenue Northeast.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. In late July 2023, the city of East Bethel received a complaint about code violations at 716 192nd Avenue Northeast. During the investigation, the code enforcement officer discovered that in addition to the identified code violations, there was also a horse on the property. A standard city code enforcement letter was issued identifying the code issues and a request that the property owner contact the city. The property owner, Wendy Cisneros, and her husband, Lavella Panal, came to the East Bethel City Hall to discuss the identified code issues with staff. At the conclusion of the discussion, multiple permit applications and an interim use permit application was applied for by Cisneros and her husband in the following week. Upon review of the building permit applications, it was discovered by the city's residential building inspector that there were construction code-related deficiencies, as well as excessive number of detached accessory structures and the missing IUP requirements for a horse to be kept on the property. A subsequent meeting was scheduled with the property owners, and the issues were identified along with a plan to remedy the city's concerns by November 15th of 2023. The applicants completed all the necessary corrective measures, and an inspection was completed on November 3rd of 2023. City Code Section 10-157, an interim use permit is required for the keeping of animals regulated under this article will be allowed only after the issuance of a city IUP for such keeping. The procedure for an IUP will be in accordance with the city zoning ordinance set forth in Appendix A of this code. The required public hearing will be before the Planning Commission. The final decision on the IUP will be made by the City Council no earlier than 7 days after the public hearing. The applicants are requesting an interim use permit to keep one horse on the property. The property is zoned rural residential, and it is 4.86 acres in size. City Ordinance Section 10-151 regulates the issuance of interim use permits, imposes acreage requirements for domestic farm animals, which provides for an interim use permit and acreage requirements for domestic animals. No animal regulated on this article can be kept on a parcel located within a platted subdivision or any parcel of land less than 3 acres, provided further that if 80% of the lots within a platted subdivision are larger than 3 acres, an IUP for keeping a regulated animal may be issued for any of those lots larger than 3 acres. Brookside Place, which was platted in 1978, I'll try and bring up the plat here for you. Included 10 lots. So 1 through 3 on the left-hand side of the screen and 1 through 7 on the right-hand side of the screen. Of those 10 lots included in the plat, only 4%, only 4 or 40% of the lots meet the acreage requirement as outlined in section 10-151. 716 192nd Avenue Northeast is one of the 4 lots that are larger than 3 acres. Section 10-152 regulates domestic farm animal shelter requirements, paddocks, and pasture land. During the November 3rd inspection, I myself was able to determine that minimum requirements for the keeping of 1 horse was possible on this property, and the applicants already had fenced 1 acre of pasture land. They have provided an adequate 12 by 30 shelter. There is food, water, and all setbacks could be met. On November 28th, the Planning Commission met and held a public hearing. City staff did request that the Planning Commission consider a limited term, 1 to 3 year IUP due to the deviation from the zoning standard identified in section 10-151 to evaluate if it has an impact on the neighborhood. There were no public comments made during the time of the public hearing, and after the Planning Commission made a recommendation of approval to the City Council, the Planning Commission did not find a term for the IUP necessary, a term limit for the IUP necessary. City staff did receive a phone call and a voicemail the day after the Planning Commission meeting from a neighbor who had received a public hearing notice by mail. She was requesting that the city not issue a permit for a horse due to the way that the applicant treats other animals on the property. There were no additional details shared, and the complainant did not want to call back on the matter. The City Council should review the request, consider the Planning Commission's formal recommendation, and approve, deny, or amend the IUP as presented in Resolution 2023-84. And I can answer any questions if there are.
Thank you, Aaron.
I move resolution 2023-84
For approval.
for approval.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Do we have any discussion?
Aaron, the complaint that you said that you got after the planning commission meeting, did they fill out a complaint form or was it just a call?
Yeah, she just left a voicemail on my office voicemail.
So then the new complaint form that's in place now was not filled out?
No, there was nothing
Okay.
filled out.
All right.
She did, in fact, didn't even request a call back.
Right, yeah, so to me it was, the way I look at that is that it couldn't have been that important to that person if they went to, came in and filled out the complaint form. So that's all I got.
Well, the planning commission definitely discussed it. Quite lengthy.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Not all those in favor of approving Resolution 2023-84, say aye.
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 Opposed? None heard. That brings us to item 7A3, preliminary plat, 1788 Viking Boulevard Northeast, Capstone Homes, Inc. And Mr. Matt's here. Just to interject something, this afternoon, at 12:57 p.m., the members of the City Council got an email from a former mayor of East Bethel Steve Voss. And I think it's, given his long time as mayor in East Bethel, he was the mayor before Tim Harrington, who I succeeded. I thought it worthwhile to share his thoughts with, on the public record. So it's, and I told him I was gonna do this. He didn't seem to disagree with doing it, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Mayor and council members, there have been several issues discussed related to tonight's consideration of the preliminary plat for Viking Meadows. But there is one that really hasn't been discussed enough. The lack of land dedicated for future commercial development along the eastern side of Sand Hill Parkway. Sand Hill Parkway was constructed by the city for two primary purposes: improve Highway 65 safety and to encourage economic development along the roadway. And while there will be some future commercial development with elevage, the use of road frontage along Sand Hill Parkway for residential housing is a waste of valuable commercial land. The proposed residential housing provides little benefit to our current residents whose long-term desires for more service-related commercial businesses. This area is zoned mixed use for a reason. Its proximity to Highway 65 for higher visibility and vehicle access, or Sand Hill Parkway is a collector roadway that will carry more traffic, which is better aligned with adjacent commercial property rather than single-family housing. The city made a substantial, over $3 million investment for the construction of Sand Hill Parkway. I encourage the City Council to stay true to the city's intent and require the land along Sand Hill Parkway be designated as future commercial use. Thanks for your consideration, Steve Voss. So that's part of the record now. So, Mr. Look, do you have any ideas what we want to do next as far as proceeding? Just ask Matt to come up, or how would you like to, or Mr. Berg, whichever.
Want to present?
I can certainly give us my staff report, and then Mr. Baker can provide some
Once
supportive
again, the
information.
floor is yours.
It's fairly lengthy.
Okay.
We also have the city engineer here, should there be any questions regarding his letter or anything that comes up from that. So,
Yep. Okay.
on November 8th, 2023, a preliminary plat and PUD application from Capstone Homes Incorporated for the redevelopment of Viking Meadows was received. The proposal shows the redevelopment of 155 acres of land, which spans across the zoning classifications of mixed use and single family residential. The proposal shows 95 acres of developable land, which will contain a proposed 242 lots. In addition, the proposal contains 60 acres of open space, which is also includes over 10 acres of park and or recreation space. I do have included in the staff report the important landmarks in time where we met for the concept plan, as well as the, in front of the Planning Commission, concept plan in front of the City Council, and then on back to the Planning Commission on November 28th was presented the preliminary plat and the PUD application, and by a 5-to-1 vote, a recommendation of approval was forwarded to the City Council. As part of this preliminary plat PUD review, staff have reviewed the following ordinances to ensure the proposal is in alignment and compliance. Section 66-12, compliance with the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, and official map, which states no subdivision of land shall conflict with the provisions of the comprehensive plan, the city's zoning ordinance, which is set forth in Appendix A to this code, or official maps. I have included an official copy of the current zoning map in your packet for review as attachment number 4. Noting that in the zoning map, this area is primarily mixed use. I reviewed section 49, the mixed use district. The purpose of a mixed use area, and that's what our ordinance says, it doesn't say mixed use district, it says mixed use area, is comprised of a number of land uses that provide mixed use development, commercial, workplace, neighborhood and parks, open space, and open space components. Subsection 2, the permitted uses. The primary land use within the mixed-use district shall include office, retail, and residential uses. The mixed location and relationship of these shall conform to the land use plan, the purpose statement, and all of the specific findings of the city council. In addition, the application shall demonstrate that to the satisfaction of the city council that the proposed lot size and land use and their mix and location are compatible and complementary both internally and with adjacent land uses. That led me to look at the land use plan as it was referenced in section 49. So from the East Bethel 2040 Comprehensive Land Use Plan, it defines mixed-use district as intended to provide development flexibility, allowing for both commercial and residential uses. For the purposes of household forecasting and the housing chapter, mixed use has a guideline of 72.5% low-density residential, 20% general commercial, and 7.5% high-density residential. The actual percentage will be determined at the time of the preliminary plat approval and may include medium-density residential, light industrial, and/or public where deemed appropriate. I want to point out attachment 5 for the council, which is the guideline from our comprehensive plan, which highlights exactly what I paraphrased from there. The purpose of a mixed-use district is intended to provide development flexibility, allowing for both commercial and residential. For the purposes of household forecast and the housing chapter, mixed use is a guideline of 72.5% low density, 20% general commercial, and 7.5% high density. So jumping over to our mixed use map, from the zoning map, I've isolated the mixed use zone, which is in green. You can see all the areas here in this general vicinity that are mixed use. So I would define this as our mixed use area, which comes out of the land use plan. I divided or split up the acreage into what size those components were for a total of 790 acres of mixed use land in this area. Then I took the general commercial, or what has been proposed as commercial, and I highlighted that over the top of the mixed use area, and then got the square footage or square area out of each one of those components, which comes out to existing or as defined as commercial or future commercial here that the city is proposing or is in support of at 218 acres. So 20% of 790 acres, 20% of this area is 158 acres. Our existing and or what's defined as commercial throughout here is already 218 acres. We're already over 20% in the mixed use area in this section for what is defined as commercial. The development procedure and single-use projects, the application procedure.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
What's included in the term commercial, particularly in that 157 acre parcel up there per section?
Yeah, so that is all sod fields, obviously. We know that that is Hoffman Sod, which is a commercial sod company. I mean, potentially could at some point, someday down the road be maybe development, we don't know.
Yeah.
But right now it's a commercial entity. There's an insurance company and a couple other commercial properties here along Sand Hill. We do know that this is King County Market, which we would assume would be commercial.
Southeast of that, in the southeast intersection corner?
This one here?
No, further up.
Here? This is
Further
the
up.
Elevage proposal?
Further up.
This one here?
That one.
This is what Capstone is proposing as that 15 acre parcel for designated for commercial.
That's the one that I was asking Craig about for commercial property, that it's full of peat.
Sure. So my analysis, again, this entire area,
Yeah.
our mixed-use area, 790 acres.
Yep.
We've designated existing right now, today, if projected the way it is, 218 acres, which is less than 20%. Or we're more than 20% already designated for commercial with this 15 acres. Even without this 15 acres, we're still over 20% in that mixed use, that total mixed use area. We're at 158 acres.
Now, are these maps being taken from the more recent, I'll say within the last 10 years, comp plan maps? Because if you look back 13, 14 years ago, the colors were a lot different.
I printed this one on December 1st of 2023, right from the comp plan. From the we have a contract with SEH that manages all of our GIS system. They manage our zoning maps, they put all the overlays in. Any zoning changes I submit to them, they get updated. This is from our current zoning map, which is in your packet.
Is that 2016 or 2014?
The current map, well, we just updated after 2 rezoning items within the last year. So, but it would have been the initial, probably
the comp
2020
plan. What was
comp
the last
plan.
version of the comp plan? Was it
I think it's
2016 or
2020,
2020?
I believe so.
Now, Aaron, this is a projection, right, for the future of what could be?
Well, so 4.26 down here at the bottom, this one, is the daycare site and Quick Trip, which already exists. And then up here is the 5.37 roughly commercial outlot that Elevage has platted. Again, 15.69 is proposed from Capstone.
So slow down a second. So we have Elvage at what, 5 and Capstone at 15, so that's 20 for projections, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And then this one is already commercial. These two, I don't know, there's actually 3 lots here that are zoned mixed use. I don't know how small they are. I didn't pull those out of that.
But that large commercial section, isn't that Hoffman?
That is Hoffman.
So we don't know what's gonna,
It's currently commercial, that's its designation right now in the mixed use is commercial.
what happens if we develop houses on that with no commercial? Is the last person then, or the last developer gonna get stuck with X amount of acres to make sure?
Potentially. Again, in the ordinance, I read here that the actual percentage will be determined at the time of preliminary plat approval and may include residential, light industrial, or public where deemed appropriate. Council makes that decision. So right now, projection is we're at 218 acres roughly, if all of what is in blue stays commercial. Our comp plan calls for 20% of the 790, which is only 158 acres.
So what happens if that blue that I keep hitting on with Craig turns out, because initially when the sewer water came in, they were talking 75-foot pilings to hold up the pipes. So it gives you kind of a good idea of what that ground is gonna be like all around there. So it's, to me, to say, well, this is maybe gonna go here, I don't know if somebody can afford to develop that.
And I'm just showing you the current conditions. I'm not, you make the recommendation. I'm just showing you what's out there right now, where the numbers are at today.
Right, okay.
So, and how that aligns with or fits into our ordinance zoning map as well as the comprehensive plan.
But basically, that 15 acres that are on the northwest corner is worthless, even if you're gonna call it commercial. If you have peat, how are you gonna build anything on that without mining all that out and probably putting pilings down to hold buildings? So to me, that's not even worth anything for the commercial part of it.
Craig, I don't know if you have that number off the top of your head. I thought there was 2+ acres there potentially buildable. Does that sound right?
About
2 acres.
2
buildable?
acres is nothing. Compared to the 15 that's there, that's worthless. So I mean, you can call it whatever, but it's not buildable land the way it sits now. That's my opinion.
I don't have the calculations, but I'm gonna guess even if I drop that 15 to 2 acres, I mean, we're already 40 acres more over right now.
Yeah, but still, we're talking about the development that Capstone's gonna do, that we're supposed to have 20% just in that development itself.
Well, our comp plan says it's 20% in the area, not development by development. It's 20% in the area. If you take a look at this little.
Yeah, but you don't know how that's gonna end up north of that. I
You're,
mean, that's
you're
just a
one, you're
projection. We don't
100%
know.
right, and that's why
Yeah,
it
so we
leaves
don't
up,
even
it leaves
know.
the council up to make the decision
Right,
case by
that's what I
case.
mean,
That's
yeah,
what,
'cause
I'm just presenting the existing conditions. So
like Bob said, it could be all houses, we don't know.
this Cambridge Apartments, excuse me, my brain's in the wrong city. The East Bethel Apartments here in the bottom left-hand corner,
Yep,
that's a mixed-use district. There's 0 commercial in there. Those 2 apartment buildings were classified as high-density residential.
where the 2 apartments are.
There's no commercial in there, and that's, our comp plan calls for
that's it.
7.9% high-density residential. So you're gonna get your high-density residential out of that apartment building right there. So you've got more than 20% already commercial. That's for you guys to decide.
Right, yeah. Cause my thought is on the whole thing is like, now with Capstone, are you strictly a residential developer? So you don't really deal in commercial development? If I understand you right.
I can, go ahead. If you wanna answer, or I can finish my presentation, we can go back.
Well,
if
I had
you-
a question. That's fine, we can finish your thing and we can do it.
Okay, all right. In section 49, the mixed-use district, under development procedure, mixed-use and single-use projects, the application procedure and the applicable general requirements pertaining to the plan unit development shall apply to the mixed-use district, subject to any exceptions, modifications, or additions set forth in ordinance. Amendments to a PUD can be proposed and implemented upon city council approval. The application procedure shall include submittal and application approved by the city council of a concept plan prior to the submittal of a PUD request. You guys will remember that on August 28th, you approved the concept plan by resolution. Under section 56, plan unit development, so mixed use requires a plan unit development. So I reviewed section 56, plan unit development, which states the purpose of a PUD is to allow for flexibility and variation from conventional ordinance standards in exchange for higher standards of development, design, creativity, architectural control, natural resource protection, landscaping, public parks, public and private open space, pedestrian access, and multi-use corridor opportunities. The PUD provisions are also intended to promote efficient use of land and promote cost-effective public and private infrastructure. The ordinance provides A through H as examples of public benefit. The public benefits to the surrounding neighborhood and the city as a whole that are intended to be derived from the approval of a plan unit development include, but are not limited to, preservation and enhancement of desirable site characteristics and open space, a pattern of development which preserves natural vegetation, topography, and geological features, preservation and enhancement of historical or natural resources that significantly contribute to the character of a city, the use of design, landscape, or architectural features to create a pleasing environment or other special development features, provision of a variety of housing types in accordance with the city's housing goals, elimination of blight structures or incompatible uses through redevelopment or rehabilitation, business and commercial development to enhance the local economy or strengthen the tax base, to assure the development of a complex unit of associated uses is planned as a single entity and not to effectuate the policies and standards of the comprehensive plan. As part of the approval process, the PUD must demonstrate public benefit to its surrounding neighborhoods and the city as a whole. Public benefit in this proposal includes, but is not limited to, preservation and enhancement of desirable site characteristics and open space. There are a vast number of wetlands and lowland areas on this property. The developer will protect and enhance the areas by creating additional amenity areas such as open space, gathering areas, and trails. The amenities will be accessible to the public and adjacent developments. Once the entire development is completely built out, trails and open spaces will be interconnected throughout the development and the adjacent development as well as other developing areas. The pattern of development preserves natural resources that significantly contribute to the character of the city. The existing wetlands will be further enhanced to provide open space and accessible trails. Wetland impacts will be mitigated on-site. Stormwater management basins will be enhanced by additional plantings and designings as wetland ponds. The use of design, landscape, and architectural features will create a pleasing environment or other special development features. Additional landscaping will be added throughout the site. Also, areas of the site that are wooded will be preserved wherever possible. A variety of housing types will be available in accordance with the city's housing goals. The development will provide a variety of rambler, multi-level, split entry, and two-story homes positioned between the existing rural residential parcels and complementary to the adjacent Elevage townhome and commercial development. The development will enhance the local economy and strengthen the tax base. The preliminary plat projected plan would generate a conservative estimate of $300,000 in annual city tax revenue at full build-out in 2028. The city would also collect $1,003,500. Can't read the number today. $1,355,200 in city SAC and WAC fees over the life of the project. This amount would pay off approximately 70% of the principal balance of the Met Reserve Capacity Loan. In addition, the increased housing units would improve the demographics in the local market area, which are needed to attract basic retail, food, and grocery store services to the city. Under the subsection 3 rules and standards, the granting of a PUD does not alter in any manner the underlying zoning district. Building permits shall not be issued which are not in conformity with the approved PUD. Under development standards, the development standards for a PUD shall be guided by the underlying zoning district and established with a PUD approval with the exception of the following standards. The minimum area for a PUD must be 3 acres. All commercial and or industrial sites shall have a minimum of 2 principal buildings or 2 principal uses on the site to qualify as a PUD. There needs to be an open space. The primary function for a PUD is to encourage development that preserves and enhances natural characteristics. In relationship to adjacent areas, the design of a PUD shall take into account the relationship of the site to the surrounding areas. The perimeter of the PUD shall be designed to minimize any undesirable impact of the development on adjacent properties and conversely to minimize the undesirable impact of adjacent land uses and development characteristics. Staff have determined that the proposal, with the approval of a homeowners association, is in compliance with the 2040 comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance, and the official zoning map. Additionally, the proposed preliminary plat and PUD meets the intended criteria for granting of a PUD based on section 56 plan unit development. As part of the PUD plat and preliminary plan plat review, staff offer the following additional comments on the preliminary plat design: streets, sidewalks, and other public places, construction of streets. The city engineer appointed by city council and at the council's direction shall take charge and review and approval of the final plans and specifications for any and all streets, roadways, or drainage facility improvements within the city. City maintenance supervisor may provide his comments directly to the city engineer. Review and approval shall be done by formal report of the city engineer. And conditions for approval should be satisfactory compliance with this division and other city ordinances. The developer, city engineer, public works manager, and city staff have met and are working in conjunction with the Anoka County Highway Department to evaluate and address the overall traffic considerations of the area. Additionally, the independent conducted traffic study results have been presented to you as well as city staff here tonight. There are a number of items cited in the formal review, which you've all seen as it's come through, concept plan and preliminary plat. All comments from the city engineer must be satisfied prior to the application for any final plat. Any and all Anoka County Highway Department and or engineering comments must be satisfied prior to the application of a final plat, including but not limited to plan review, right-of-way access permit, county ditch review. Those letters from the city engineer and the county engineer and or highway department are attached for your review. The Planning Commission held a public hearing at its November 28th meeting. One property owner spoke and was in favor of it, in support of the preliminary plat. After review and discussion, the Planning Commission by a 5-to-1 vote recommended approval of the preliminary plat and the PUD to the City Council. City Council should review the request, consider the Planning Commission's formal recommendation of approval, and consider approval of the preliminary plat and PUD as presented in Resolution 2023-85 and the PUD in 2023-86. It's a lot of information.
Thank you, Aaron. You guys have questions?
Say, Aaron, I'm concerned about the road that the city put in for $3 million. I remember that being at least proposed as a road that was going to be used for commercial, like a collective road, like ex-mayor Voss has spoken about. What's going to happen if no commercial goes in there? Are the city residents going to have to, well, they already have footed $3 million. I mean, you break it down, to get $1 million with 12,000 residents, it's what, $83, so times 3, that's $250. So every resident paid $250 basically for this road for commercial, and that was what it was told down to them what it was going to be, and it may not be that at all. What do we tell the residents now?
Well, I can point out that this 5-acre parcel outlot is designated for commercial use. That is commercial right now. Quick Trip is here. There's a daycare coming. Those are the known projects on the horizon.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Quick Trip was supposed to also have a diesel fuel for semi-trucks and so forth, and they opted out of that because of the expense to build on that next to them, or that piece of land next to them.
When Quick Trip had their plans approved, they submitted a revised plan probably the week before bid, which removed the diesel island. I don't know why they did that. I have no confirmation on details why they removed their car wash or their diesel island.
So we're taking Sand Hill, Crane, Boulevard Road, whatever you wanna call it. And if we don't put commercial in there, we're not gonna recoup anything on the taxes from a commercial standpoint.
Well, you may have the long-lasting property tax coming from 242 homes that get built adjacent to that are gonna primarily use that road. The long-range tax impact.
It was somebody I know, in fact, they're in the room, told me that there was a study done that unless homes are at $450,000 or more, they're actually a loser compared to commercial properties, for example, on that Sac-Wac property tax argument. They actually consume more city services than they pay for. Do you know who that was?
I do, Mr. Mayor. That was a Senate fiscal study done in, 15 years ago.
15 years ago. I wonder what the current numbers are.
I do believe that MnDOT paid for some of Sand Hill Parkway. So some of that,
I don't
was
know
paid
if the
for.
grant was specifically for Sand Hill or it could be used on anything else.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't around at the time, I don't know.
I have no idea.
But
That was for Sand Hill. This was all fully funded from MnDOT, CARES Act, the MSA street funds, which is money we get from the state. And I think there's one other source, so it did not actually come out of the tax coffers.
Just for the folks watching, when you hear people throw around sack and whack, it's basically the sewage access charge and the water access charge. There's another word in the middle, it's not access, but whatever. Same idea, it's you're hooking into those systems, so that's what people are talking about. So there's a one-time fee when you hook up to them, and then there's ongoing costs of using them. So that's what the sack whack thing is about. I had a conversation this week with somebody, a couple of people actually, and I'll have a follow-up phone conversation with a group of people on Wednesday morning. But there's been this concept that I've been looking for the term, and somebody, it was actually Joe Ryder of the Planning Commission, mentioned the term at the last Planning Commission meeting, the one where they discussed this. And it was a fiscal impact analysis or fiscal impact study. And that is because it is very common for people to sell development projects based on, well, you're going to have more property taxes or you'll have sack whack fees or whatever. And the simple question for me is, if that's so, then why is Blaine, who has sold literally every square foot of the place practically that you could build on, why are they having a 19% increase in their property tax levy this year? If that's the case, and they have a lot of high density residential and all that, so it's not a panacea necessarily. And I do believe, Steve Voss and I didn't agree on a whole lot of stuff, I suppose, but I respected his opinion as a person, and I think that he raises an interesting point, and he was part of the process by which this comprehensive plan was developed and was on the Planning Commission, was mayor, city council, all that stuff, and I think he's brought up some excellent points. But for what little moment that I have to influence things, I really believe sincerely that we need to use a fiscal impact analysis approach to development projects. You don't just take things it's like a business plan. You don't just count revenues and ignore expenses, You have to look at the whole picture. So you see, yes, there will be sack whack fees. Yes, there will be property tax increases, collections and property taxes, but it has to be weighed against what are the demands for services and what are the value of those services. I ran out of air there. And that's what a fiscal impact analysis is supposed to get at. It's like a complete feasibility study. And it's tempting in our case because of this burdensome debt load that we have due to the water and sewer system. And when people say, why do you bring that up, Kevin? Well, if we're not paying for it, and when we stop paying for it, I'll stop talking about it. But this year it's over $1 million, over $1,100,000 that we're going to have to cough up. About 18% of our budget is debt service. And when that's gone, I won't talk about it anymore, but as long as it's 18% of our budget, it seems like fair game. But those, when you're encumbered like that, it makes you do things that may not be entirely rational. And that's actually the purpose of putting people into debt slavery. It's done all over the world. China's done a lot of it in Africa. Oh, you can't pay your loans? You can't pay your debt? Well, just give us all your minerals. We'll call it even. It's an old tactic. You know, it's been used by kings and people for centuries. But anyway, so we're in a small fry in that scenario, but we do have this debt, and it's very tempting to, you know, want to collect fees, and yes, they would offset the reserve capacity loan and pay toward the bonds and all that. But what we have to really keep center focus is what do the people, the residents, the current residents of East Bethel want? That's at the bottom, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Because we're the ones that are going to have to live with the results of whatever development is done and how it's done and all that. And I don't claim to have any special insight into what all the people of East Bethel want, and I don't think anybody else here does either. But that's the balancing, the balance that we have to strive to find. That's the balancing point we have to strive to find. Any further discussion of this topic and questions? Matt's here with Capstone, and so is Steve. So, sure, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and council members. Thank you, staff. It's been a long journey. We've been working at this for over 6 months, trying to just listen and work with the city, with the public, and all the people that have been involved with presenting a lot of different ideas of how to ultimately how to improve the Viking Meadows community. That the ownership group came to us with an ask that we would help in that endeavor, and it's been a good journey. We appreciate the discussion, the opportunities to listen, and the opportunities to make changes. And as we went through that process this last summer, from June all the way through August into the later part of August, we felt like we got great response from each of you to get us to the point where we had an approved concept. And that approved concept is exactly what you see tonight. It is what was originally presented to you with terms of total homes, 242 homes, which at the beginning of this, if you remember, was 350 homes. And it actually was 30 more acres that we were asked to remove from the whole plan. So we're down substantially from where we started in an effort to just meet what the request was from each of you and from the public. That final plan, we then have invested almost $250,000 in putting together this preliminary plat that you now see. So we've had a substantial investment that we've put forward because of that approval of that original concept that we brought. And our hope is that we can continue to move towards receiving approval for this plan, but I understand the questions. So I want to maybe just speak a little bit to the commercial parcel that's been brought up a few times. Capstone is not retaining that parcel. That is not our parcel to retain. Viking Meadows, the golf course, wants to retain that, and they are continuing to promote the development of it. Just like it is with our community and what we will be doing within the Viking Meadows residential component, there's a lot of mitigation of soils. There's mitigation of peat, there's mitigation of wetlands and other things that have to be done in order to do sensible development. Our goal was to preserve as much of that as possible. That's why there's almost 60 acres that are preserved within the Viking Meadows community. But on the flip side of that, for this commercial parcel, the Viking Meadows golf course, as they retain the ownership of that, will have to make some decisions as to exactly what they want to do with that. We haven't been privy to...
Could you repeat that? As for what? With the 30 acres you're talking about?
The 15 acres.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, the 15-acre parcel. The Viking Meadows golf course, they'll have to choose what they want to do with that.
Right.
We haven't seen the true soil borings and the analysis of that. We've heard that they have had interested parties in that, and their intent is to continue to promote that for commercial growth. I think the thing that is important for us, when we looked to this community, we looked at some of the information that Aaron presented to you tonight in regards to what's commercial, what's kind of best suited for residential, and that's what helped us draft the plan that you saw. There's a great 40-acre parcel kitty corner to this that is, I believe I heard King County Market. That's a great place for a market to go. There's lots of room for their parking lot, for the structure, and some of those other things that really We hope to drive to East Bethel with the roofs. The rooftops bring commercial. You guys have heard that many times. So the hope is that those types of parcels that are really well designed for that can have that opportunity to be invested into by commercial. And we would not have looked at the sod farm as a residential community. We see that commercially aligned here. It's got commercial backing on Viking Boulevard. So I think that as a developer, you would look at those items and try and figure out exactly how things would lay out the best. But
I mean, you get the irony, right? You're taking 155 acres from a commercial use, it's a golf course, it's a business, and putting it into residential.
We're doing our best to
I mean,
use.
but yeah, I mean, in the concept, in the context of the comprehensive plan, it's literally moving from commercial to residential.
Right, and that was, again, looking at best use practices.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
best use
I'm
practice
just
for
saying,
that
it's kind of
parcel was.
ironic that we're having
Yeah,
the conversation.
I guess I can understand where your comment is. This one sits between two residential areas, so it was best used to continue that residential step down from the elevage product down into your rural residential that's off to the further to the
Like I
east.
told you guys when we met here several months ago, I voted against elevage. It's a matter of incongruity with East Bethel, and it's just one person's opinion, okay? I'm not saying I speak for anybody else. But it just seems incongruous to me, that and the nature of East Bethel. Yeah, I'm just one guy. But this is, you get Steve Voss's point though, right? You heard his letter. I mean, and he's an environmental engineer. Not only was mayor here a long time, but he's dealt with a lot of these issues we're talking about. Very smart guy.
Absolutely.
And so, it's worth putting a little bit of weight, and a long-term resident here too, so it's worth putting a little weight on what he says.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can concur with that. As I read the same document that was presented here earlier, one of the things that it says there is the commercial development it's key that it is on 65. And so I understand Elevage has got great commercial access right to 65. That was right from your comprehensive plan. I believe the language was.
Of the two parcels, I think Elevage, the parcel it's on, was the better for commercial development than, you know, even the western chop off a chunk of Viking Meadows.
Yeah, and
I think it was the prime piece.
I don't know that I can speak to that process and how that happened.
Yeah,
you know,
no.
so our goal was to bring forward an option to the council. We did that over the course of the last 6 months, and, and your feedback indicated we were in the right direction. So that plan that the concept that was approved is what you have in front of you again here tonight.
And so we're kind of trapped between two things. We inherited the comprehensive plan, which was developed by other people, not us, at least not us for the most part. And on the other hand, we're getting feedback from the community as this project becomes known. So when we're standing in the middle of this two, neither one of which we can control, the current reaction or the comprehensive plan that we inherited. But we're trying, again, that balancing act. That's all we're striving for.
Absolutely,
and we're not anti-development. That's not it. It seems the design seems driven by the cost, $700 a lineal foot or whatever it is for water sewer, and everything's so packed close together. That's the part that seems inconsistent with most of East Bethel, from a person who lives here standpoint. That's the part that seems kind of off, you know.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your feedback.
Just trying to give you share some thoughts, that's all.
Yep.
I'm curious, I've asked about the commercials, the 20%. I believe this is my third time now, over this last 6 months. Why am I being told that this is how it was looked at now? I don't know if somebody can answer that, but nobody explained that we had a big plot of acreage, and so far we've used up so much, and this is allotted for this, so we don't have to. I didn't even know you guys weren't going to keep the 15 acres. I thought you guys had 15 acres and you planned for commercial, you know, future commercial buildings.
Yeah,
I'm finding out tonight something totally different again.
That parcel is a large parcel, and that corner is included in the parcel that is right now. It's a 40-acre parcel basically, or something like that. So when we go to plat that gets separated, and we're not a commercial development company or a home builder. So leaving that in the hands of the Viking Meadows Golf Course, the company, to pursue that, I apologize if that's new information, and it is somewhat new because it's now being shown as a part of that preliminary plat where that wasn't really a part of our discussion in the past.
Right.
The 20% came forward at Planning Commission. That was a concern brought forward by one of the planning commissioners, and we felt it was probably important to, I felt like it was important to share a little bit more about my understanding of that. And Aaron, I think you did a good job of helping us understand. We were learning a little bit alongside of him how that 20% goes over the entire area, not just parcel, not that each parcel has to have 20%. So just trying to understand that better was important, I think, and it offered opportunity for discussion tonight.
Right.
You recall at the recent planning commission meeting, there was seemed to be a debate about lot widths and where they're measured versus setbacks and all that kind of stuff. You remember that conversation?
Yes, sir.
What was the final disposition of that? What was the truth of the matter in that? Is it, because I believe it was you maintained that the lot width was determined at the front of at the setback place, not at the road. Is that
At the structure,
true?
wasn't it?
Structure, yeah. So you're set back from your right of way. So your starting point, as we understood it, as we understand, and this is pretty common, Craig might be able to speak to this as well.
Yeah, I'd really like to know the answer to that question, because I didn't really get it out of the planning commission meeting.
Yeah, at the frontage or at the right of way line. So you have your right of way line, you would start your setback, push back to, so in this case, either 25 or 30 foot setback. At that setback point, so if you go back 25 feet, that is the point that you determine your lot width. That's the point where you would determine, is it a 55 foot lot, 70
And
foot
you
lot?
concur with that, Craig?
Well, every city has a little different definition. I think the city of East Bethel is defined at the right of way. Is that correct? Unless it's an irregular lot, and then there's some flexibility of where it's measured. So like, for example, in East Bethel, it's been policy on cul-de-sac lots, as long as the lot width at the setback meets that dimension, they've accepted those lots. But in general terms, a standard lot is measured at the right of way.
Well, no wonder it wasn't clear. It's not clear.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the explanation.
And that, if you do look closely at the actual lines, when you see just a standard squared lot, you do see the 55 or the 70 or the 80 foot lot dimensions. It's when you get into the irregular, which is on a curve or on a cul-de-sac, that we're anticipating that house has to go back for it to be properly distanced between the other structures. So that's where we just have always assessed it to be at the setback line, because that's going to be the furthest back that house needs to sit, the minimum that it needs to sit, in order to truly be the correct side setbacks, the rear setbacks, and the actual pad of the house to be, set back from the homes around it.
We do have a specific section in the ordinance that states irregular shaped lots may not meet certain standards, but as long as the developer places the structure compatible with the standard lots around it, that's acceptable. And it calls for some variation and allows for irregular shaped lots. However, it doesn't define what an irregular shaped lot is.
As clear as mud, huh? What does the term view shed mean? You use that in your developer letter. I've never heard that term.
I think the thing that's really going to be exciting about the community is the view that you get once you get to a certain point. So for example, if you're at one of these houses overlooking the open space, that outlot A, the view that they have there is phenomenal. And that's the view shed that we define. We see that through the park as well, the view shed out of the park into the open space. Those are view sheds that that's how we define a view shed.
A view, and basically just the view, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
It's a term that we actually learned from Mike.
Yeah, I've never heard it before.
Mike Gear. He is he's one of the leading landscape architects. He's designed several of our communities.
Huh.
And he actually had a little bit of input in how we design this. And it's a term that he uses often, so it's one that we like to. I think it
Learn
defines
something every day.
how you see and how you understand things. So,
What kind of buffer do you foresee between the closest to the Highway 65?
Yeah,
As far
so-
as noise barriers or berms, or what do you, trees, berms, what do you?
Yeah, if you look in some of the areas that are retained or left, we're not touching all along Sand Hill Parkway. There's a nicely established tree line all along Sand Hill Parkway there that we're not touching, that will remain. And then if you look in the landscape plan, there is a section between our street, I think it's gonna be defined as Meadows Drive, and the school, that we're actually adding quite a bit more tree structure and buffering there. We also have more tree structure and buffering you'll see in the landscape plan adjacent to elevage as well. And then up on Viking Boulevard, there's a pretty big stand of trees that's along Viking Boulevard. If you go to the golf course, that real nice tall stand of trees that is between Viking Boulevard and the golf course, you kind of drive by it and you turn in. There's a lot of that gets left too. So we actually tried to keep those view sheds. We try and keep those viewpoints pretty nicely kept, so that there's a nice barrier, sound barrier, view barrier, a couple different features that come from that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
So you answered my question then, basically, that I had before. You are strictly residential developer, right?
Yes, correct.
So the way this development's laid out, there's supposed to be so much commercial in there, and now you're saying that the northwest corner is basically gonna be retained by Viking Meadows? So that's gonna be their responsibility to develop that in the commercial?
It's their opportunity to develop it, correct?
So then you'll have nothing to do with that?
Correct, that will not be ours, we won't retain it. It'll stay within the pre-plat of Viking Meadows, so it'll still remain as a platted outlot that can be developed.
So my point is that it may never even happen.
We can't control development, you're
I
correct.
understand that,
Yeah.
but we need to think about, if we want the commercial to be there, then we should probably, my own opinion is, we should have a developer that does commercial and residential and do the whole plot, the whole thing. And after I looked at your plans and I looked at the houses that you have on your cul-de-sacs, you have like 7 or 8 on some of them. And just from what I've seen, because I was on the planning commission when Whispering Aspen, north of you guys, came in there and they wanted 6 houses on a cul-de-sac, which most of the time, most cul-de-sacs in East Bethel have 3. Whispering Aspen has another cul-de-sac that has 4. And the radius of that is 40 feet on that particular one. There's supposed to be 50, according to our zoning. The new one has 6 houses that does have the 50-foot radius, so that means 100 feet across. But if you go up there, my concern is with the snow removal and stuff like that. And I guess the question for Nate, how many times do we have to haul snow out of there last year?
We were up there a couple times. Last year was kind of a...
Right, because we had a lot of snow. Because it's for a safety factor, if we have to get fire department vehicles or whatever in there, it's gonna be very tight to do that. And I'd be very surprised, even up in Whispering Aspen, if you don't back out of your driveway into your neighbor, because it's that tight. And if nobody has been up there to take a look at it, I'd suggest going up there to look at it. So I'm not in favor of that tight stuff like that at all.
May I speak to the cul-de-sac question that you
Yep.
brought forward? Yeah. We have another development that we've done recently in our community that has a 29-foot street, so a much smaller street,
Really?
and actually a smaller radius cul-de-sac in Andover. And I'd be happy to share with you a little bit more about how we manage the snow concern. And within that development, on that cul-de-sac, we were able to create different areas where that snow could get piled up. And it worked really efficiently. And actually in that community, this last year with the record snowfall, number 5 snowiest year, there was no snow hauled out of it. And I think that that's efficient design. So if we can present to you how we've done that, and been successful with that, I think that we could show you how and that you're talking about the cul-de-sac that has the 55-foot lot. So it's a narrower home, narrower pad. And we have the ability to show you how it can work, and I can show you the evidence of how it did work this last year in our Andover community.
Because I know I've heard a lot of them, they're gonna pile the snow in the middle and stuff like that. To me, that's dangerous too, because kids love to build stuff out of snow piles, you know? And it's like, we gotta watch it as making decisions on this stuff for safety and cost for residents, just for snow and just safety of everything. So, but I mean, something that you have like that, I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share that information with you.
Okay.
I think it's, you'd encounter it probably even more in a multifamily townhome complex. It's the same challenge, and I had the privilege of managing a lot of those prior to my development experience here. And you're right, it's a lot of work, but it's completely manageable. And I think if you have smart design and smart engineering, which I firmly believe we have with our engineers, I think you can mitigate those
Yeah,
concerns.
because see, it's gonna cost the city, once you guys are done and gone, to maintain all that. You know what I mean? So I
There's-
mean, anything efficient would be great to know.
Yeah, and yeah, another example, thanks for mentioning that. We have the same product on a 40-foot lot in Cottage Grove, and it's got 3 cul-de-sacs. And so it's even tighter in that regards. And again, no snow removal because of the engineering methods. Remember too, there's an HOA here. So there's some efforts that the HOA can maybe take to help with some of those impacts that could be further researched and see
So
how
like,
that might work.
are you creating the HOA, or is the city gonna be responsible for that?
No, the homeowners association is the homeowners, the community there.
Okay,
will
so it'll be
take and
part of the
manage that.
homeowners that are there.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the homeowners association will be established over the entire community, and all the community will be responsible to that association. It will eventually, as we step out from the development standpoint, be turned over to the homeowners, who will then enact a board that will then take care of their community moving forward. And that gives I think that puts the onus or the responsibility to the homeowner. So I did mention that in my feedback to the staff. It takes some of that, it could take quite a bit of responsibility off the city, because the homeowners board then becomes responsible for some of the things that may be like code enforcement here. You know, they could take some responsibility for how their association is being cared for by the homeowners. So there's a lot of benefit to that, and I think that we'll find success with this type of a community, where we're not only gonna have different lot product styles, but we're gonna also have common area maintenance. There's gonna be a nice private park there that's owned by the community. There's just gonna be ownership that is really gonna be neat to see, I think, within a community like that. And that's our specialty. It's something that we can do well from Capstone. We have 12 different communities that we're managing. We're building right now, and just last week turned over that community I mentioned in Andover to the homeowners, and they are now doing their part to continue to care for it. So we can help with that, and that's something that we do well.
Okay.
I can't
Sorry,
speak for anybody
sorry,
else,
Tim.
but I'm not prepared to do anything on this tonight. I need more time to think about this and
Tim, you had some stuff.
secure opinions of other people or residents and whatnot. That's just where I'm at. So, what do you guys think?
Would you be interested in meeting with Capstone further to
No, I don't
discuss the
think it's
possibility
a
of,
matter of meeting with Capstone. I
well,
think it's a
to
matter of
discuss
getting
the possibility of including any more commercial or anything like that?
Well, I don't think the commercial is the issue, especially since I don't own that outlot anyway. It's a lot of information to process. And one thing what's good about this city council is we're real detail oriented and all that. What's bad is we're deliberative. And, this is a big consequential project, and we wanna make sure we do our due diligence, and I don't feel comfortable yet making a call one way or the other for myself, anyway.
And I appreciate that.
Just where I'm at,
I
that's all.
appreciate that, Mayor, and our goal has been all along to provide you with information, and I think that actually has created a pretty big case here tonight with a lot of information. We've done our research with environmental groups. The NHIS letter was another item that came forward where we did the research with the state on environmental issues. We've done a lot of other research with regards to many of the other components. So please give us an opportunity to answer any questions or any other things that come up.
Yeah,
We
we'll
would-
continue to ask the questions, and we're gonna have a meeting in, the 27th or whatever, and can pick
Did
it
you
up
guys
then.
do an ecological impact statement?
Ecological impact
I
statement.
don't know if that's what it's called nowadays, but
Not in EIS, but we've done portions
Right, so the environmental worksheet was, we were asked by staff to provide some responses to several important questions on that. So there's 4 questions that you do have in your packet that are related to what an environmental study would normally be
Attachment
asking.
number 9. Attachment number 9 is your reference to environmental.
Yeah, and that was done through CHELOG, so there's quite a bit of detail in there about some of the different environmental components of the community. I think it was the questions that were the most relevant to the engineer and staff.
I don't know if you know, but Mr. Look is from Ramsey, and he knows your owner. So do you have any thoughts you want to share at this time?
Well,
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
yeah, Mr. Mayor, I can certainly vouch for their integrity. They build a great product. What I will say is that there's some discussion about the road coming through and the cost of the residents, paid for that. And I wasn't here obviously with the discussion of commercial or whatnot, but what I will say is a development like this will impact your tax capacity. Thank you is the word I'm looking for. Tax capacity, which, as you know, as a city, you establish your budget, which is your pie, and everybody gets a slice of that pie: commercial, industrial, residential, and the more entities you have, the lower your tax capacity is, or the more tax capacity you have, so the lower percentage is. That's helps to offset the cost of the investments that have been made in there thus far. But it's really a policy decision as far as it relates to how this mixed-use development takes shape. And you guys have certainly discussed that sufficiently here tonight. But as it relates to the home builder, I have high marks for them. They've done a great job in Ramsey. They certainly do exactly what they say they're going to do, and I know you guys sell homes like crazy in Ramsey, so there's definitely a market for those homes, and I would expect these would sell as well. They may not be everybody's flavor of home, but there are some people that like living in townhomes, and some people that like living in apartments, and it's different than me and perhaps yourself.
Some
but
people like living in homes that are right on top of each other.
Some people like that. But it does offer, communities that have various different housing options are not necessarily a bad thing for kind of life cycle housing. As people, grow older, they will start looking for, they start off with apartments, it seems, or townhomes, and they move into single family, and then they move into patio homes as they near retirement. There's that whole life cycle. And so that's just a policy decision you need to make as far as how many of those elements you provide in your community. So.
Okay, thank you. Well, where are you guys at?
I kind of agree with you. This was a lot of information tonight, good information. Some things we didn't know about before. It's a very important project. Once it's in, it's in. I mean, it's what the city's going to look like right there. So I still think I would love to hear more from residents, but.
And it's not the paralysis of analysis, okay? I'm familiar with that syndrome. People who can never make a decision, that's not us. We can make a decision, but you know the process. We all do. We all make big decisions, big purchases, whatever. And you get to a point where you're comfortable making it. And until you get there, you're not comfortable making it. Especially when you're doing it on behalf of 12,000 other people. If it were just us making the decision, it would have been done already one way or the other. But that's the hard part. We're making it on behalf of our fellow residents. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, section 66-77 subdivision 10 gives you 60 days from the date of application and approval from the planning commission to make a decision. You have approximately, including tonight, 3 meetings before you reach the 60-day limit.
But now isn't there a 60-day extension to that?
We would need to provide a reason to the developer for an extension.
Right.
I
Thank
just
you,
want to
Aaron.
give you that time frame
No,
reference so that you
appreciate
have that
it.
in mind when you're thinking about future digestion of information.
Appreciate it.
Mayor and council members, I will also tell you based upon experience, when you're dealing with the development of this nature, preliminary plat and a PUD, especially when they're both, and they generally do both come before the council, it is fairly standard for that council to table because for the very reasons that you're talking about, there's a lot of information to assess. So we'll give you an idea, time to hear this very detailed report that you've heard, and then, of course, table for the next council meeting in order for you to really kind of assess, analyze, think, and so forth, so you can make that informed decision that you're seeking to do so. So a motion to table to the next meeting, December 27th, would be appropriate in my experience.
I make a
Thank you.
motion to table it till the next meeting.
Second.
Give a chance to kind of go through everything.
Well, it was 289 pages on Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't realize we got a 289-page packet to review Friday afternoon. So it's a lot of reading.
You should be the guy putting that together.
Thanks, Kerry.
Now we know. Well,
Well, a motion's been made and seconded to table this until the next meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None heard.
Thank
you very
for
much,
the,
guys.
information.
I'll say the
Holy
same
cow.
thing we said to Nexus, the psychiatric residential treatment facility that came in about 6 months ago now. Well, about 4 months ago, whatever. And just be patient with us, okay? We're just deliberative about it, that's all.
We appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor,
And
and council members. We
Thank you
appreciate
very much.
thank
Yep,
you.
we'll
Thank
see
you.
ya.
I'm not gonna make this mistake again. I'm gonna ask for council reports right now.
Staff report first.
Staff report. Oh, I don't imagine Mr. Look has a staff report yet, do you? Do
Been a
you?
busy day.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I can give you a little rundown.
You found your office.
Yeah, I just wanna really say thank you to the staff. They've been very accommodating as we've been coming up to speed here and diving in on the budget and getting feet wet and all that good stuff. I do wanna say that we started off right away with contacting an AV company to start
Oh,
addressing some of the
excellent.
concerns. In here, we're looking for kind of an analysis of what they feel is,
Yeah.
might be some of the deficiencies and some of the costs associated with that. So we should be getting some information back
Good.
from them on that.
Good.
Doesn't commit us to anything, just gives us more information on that. I want to thank Nate too for the tour of East Bethel. We kind of drove around to all the facilities and
Nobody knows it better than.
it was a beautiful day to do it, and I think it was 40-some degrees, maybe a little warmer. It was beautiful out. But we had a great tour of all the areas, so I appreciate that. We're doing some research a little bit on public opinion options that are out there right now. So more information will be coming on that. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of keeping a watchful eye on the county and their positions that they're taking right now on 22 and 65. I think they bring a lot of horsepower to that discussion. And having been part of that work on Highway 10 and certainly on Highway 65, most recently Highway 65, I think now is the time. Now is the time to jump on that and start getting before the legislature and making an ask for some of the challenges that we're seeing out there on the reduced conflict intersection that we have 100% increase in conflicts on. And that may or may not weigh in on the traffic study. I think they indicated it probably favors that. And I think certainly, however, to the east that develops, that'll be additional traffic and load on the roadway systems too. So it'll be, I think, a timely process. Sometimes MnDOT will build after the fact, after the problems come,
And Anoka County has been kind of leading the way on building before the fact. You know, we know the problems are coming, so you anticipate the problems and you build accordingly, and that's been working out well. But we're continuing to work hard here at the city, and appreciate, again, the staff and their incredible work.
they're
Got a great team assembled, so I appreciate their hard work.
Did you hear anything more about the East Bethel Bulletin? Is that ever?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I failed to mention that. I was talking with Carrie today. We are in the process of evaluating some of the information in there, making sure it's still current before it goes to publication. We may be looking at possibly some
You
other...
mean the version that's online?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Before we go to a print and actually mail that out.
Oh, yeah.
With my past work, I'm familiar with some different printers and different mail houses. So one of the goals is to try and identify what the current rates are that are being paid, and if there's savings that can be achieved through that. And if there are, great.
Yeah, we just need reliability more
Right.
than frequency of it.
Right.
Is reliability. It's got to be.
And I passed that on today, and I know that we'll be working on that to get that completed as well.
Like I said, I'm not emotionally committed to it coming out 6 times a year instead of 4, but you know, it may be a useful thing to do.
Yep. So
thank you for the update.
welcome.
And again, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Council reports?
Just want to say Merry Christmas to everybody and Happy Holidays. I hope everybody gets what they want from Santa and no coals in your stockings unless you really like coal.
Brian, I'm gonna have to break it to you. There is no Santa Claus.
You can't say that 100%.
I know it's heartbreaking, but just kidding you.
So that's all I have.
Anybody else have anything? If not, we're gonna move into a closed session.
Yeah, the ice on Coon Lake is rather thin. Gentleman
Dangerous.
found out last week, he went through with the ice with 2 of his dogs.
Well,
In fact, I think 2 people went through last week. One guy was just walking, he said he was new to the neighborhood, so he wasn't really familiar with how ice freezes. And he found out because,
yeah.
so yeah, I mean, you know, people are on the channel fishing. It's maybe an inch.
They'll still be
2
there in
inches.
2 weeks when it's solid.
Everybody have Merry Christmas?
Yep.
We'll see you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yep.
Yep. Be
And,
safe.
and we're gonna move into a closed session to discuss a real estate matter.
With that, Mayor, if I could, for the record, note that pursuant to Minnesota statute, section 13D.05, subdivision 3C, the city council will be moving into a closed session to discuss the purchase or sale of real property. The property in question is PIN number 29-33-23-0002. And with that, Mayor, open it up for a motion and a second and a vote to proceed into closed session.
Before I make the motion, Craig, thanks for showing up and answering some questions.
Thanks for having me.
Wanted to make sure that we mentioned that. With that, I make a motion
Thank
to
you,
go
Craig.
into closed session.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Thanks for your help on the other, on the fiscal impact thing too.
All right. Mayor, council members, just for the record to note that we have returned as the council from a closed session. It is, according to my clock here, 10:01 p.m. this December 11th, 2023. And the result of the closed session was a consensus by the council to direct staff to proceed forward with the potential sale of city property to an interested party, and if able to secure a potential purchase and sale price, then of course that purchase agreement would have the sufficient terms and conditions to the satisfaction of the council, and the agreement would be brought to the council for approval when and if that occurred. With that, that brings the closed session status report on the record to a close. And then I bring it over to you to conclude this regular session, which I assume the next agenda item is a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Good job, guys.